Welcome to today's edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest. Very happy to have you with us as we await what will be the second round of playoff games in the National Football League. We're a little less than a week away from seeing who's going to be the national champion in college football. And you're thinking to yourself, what the hell am I going to do when the football season is over? We've been heavily concentrating on football. In fact, I don't know that we've dabbled into much, maybe a couple of college basketball games here on Bury Your Bookie over the last several months. And there are many people that go through withdrawal when the football season is over in terms of their gambling. Has the NBA become not just an impossible proposition for gamblers, but just to even watch? But with the obsession with shooting three-pointers, analytics, many people feel just ruining the game because you used to have, I remember and coach said to me, hey, look at the great Oscar Robertson. That's going way back. Says his philosophy is, and he had like the biggest ass the size of Wayne Embry, who was in the NBA at the time, and it was like a human eclipse of the sun. It was like Sid Fernandez was playing basketball. But Robertson was very adept at being on the left side baseline and just squaring up the one shoulder and putting a shot up over a guy, an outstretched defender. And secondly, he would back this guy down by putting that ass right in the guy's crotch. And his philosophy was, why would I shoot a 12-footer when I could shoot an 11-footer? And we have gone 180 degrees departure from that because now a guy drives to the basket and is in a position to go ahead and finish at the hoop. And what does he do? His immediate instinct is to kick it out to a guy who's going to chuck it up from 30 feet away. And because the analytics say, listen, you only have to shoot 33% from the field from three-point range to have the equivalent of what used to be the barometer for shooting efficiency, a 50% shooting percentage from closer in. And so they're jacking up 93s a game in the NBA. Does that make it unwatchable, unbettable? I don't know. But we're looking for things. Got the Australian Open working right now, and we're looking for things to start to plunge our money and opinion in. And we will have some thoughts here about public handicappers at college basketball because they have so many quantifiers that it's hard to trust anything. I've come to the point where if I read an article about a game, a breakdown of a game, or a prediction on a game, an advice piece that's telling you which side to bet on, over, under, whatever it happens to be, prop bets, the more intelligently and rationally it's composed, and the more analytic material it has in there, including you have stats that you never even heard of before, right? They break it down into such minutia that you have to be a calculus major to understand what the fuck anybody's talking about. And sure enough, the most rationally proposed ideas on betting are always the one to go against. You should just search for all of the people that are making predictions in public forums, whatever it happens to be, whether it's ancient Cro-Magnon man newspaper prediction or on the most modern form of social media. Just take them all collectively, and the ones that make the most sense, go against them 100%. We'll have an example of that. If you aren't betting, though, we hope you're winning. And of course, Bet Online is your ultimate platform. Continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for all online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college basketball, the NHL, UFC, boxing, they have it all. Head to BetOnline today, and don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, it's kind of an interesting proposition because if you are betting, and a long time ago, Andy Beyer wrote, and I believe in his first book, it was called Picking Winners. And he wrote the line that was right up there with Call Me Ishmael, Moby Dick, right up there with any great opening line in any book. And that was, women and gambling don't mix. Now, there are many women that are gambling now, and they gamble in different forms. Some of them are making sports picks. In fact, you would be convinced, and I've never seen this. We've said this before, but I've never seen this. When have you walked into a casino sports book, and especially if they have simulcast thoroughbred racing there, and seeing the majority of people be smoking hot babes that are occupying the room. No, these are the dregs of the universe. These are people that look like they just slept in the trunk of their car and are only there to wait for somebody to get up and leave a free drink coupon so they can actually get something to eat and drink. Usually, appearance-wise, they look like the guy on the cover of the Aqualung album a long time ago with Jethro Tull. I mean, just sitting on a park bench. Nasty bunch of people. You don't see a bunch of babes there. So I think it's fair to say that, in general, women and gambling don't mix. And a perfect example would be now that people are betting on virtually everything and at all different times. If you happen to be in a casino setting, and you've gone to the sports book. The woman that you're with at the time, she's finished up. Maybe she played a few slots, did a little shopping down there, which is always very prohibitive when they're shopping in the casino stores. You go to the Bellagio. Do you really want your girl looking around there and saying, "Yeah, I'm over here at Judith Lieber's," and she picks up a purse that's the size of your cell phone and it costs you $6,000, and you're like, "What the hell?" Would have been much better off paying more attention to her and getting my ass out of the sports book and the race book and actually spending some time with this person. But when it comes about and you have action and you have to leave the room, I don't know what exactly the protocol and the standards would be because most women are not big fans and it's become common practice. It's almost, when you're thinking about etiquette, should the cell phone not be put away when you're having dinner with your girl, and it's that dinner that the casino host comped you. You're in, for example, a really nice restaurant, like we used to be accommodated with a very generous offering to eat at Gordon Ramsay at Harrah's in Atlantic City, and/or what was Cafe Monterano, not the real facsimile of the one that we have here in South Florida, but for casino food, pretty upscale. It's now a different Italian restaurant. So now you're going to go in at dinner. You have a reservation for 7:30, but you have action on a baseball game of all things, or yeah, now in season college basketball game. It tips off at 7 o'clock. You're watching as much of it as you can before at the last second she's calling you and saying, "Are you coming? I'm at the desk," and you can't drag yourself away. So, would it be proper? I mean, the last thing you want to receive daggers from the woman that's sitting across the table from you. Just go ahead and reach for your phone, and she says, "What are you doing?" And then you're saying, "Well, I'm just checking the score in this ball game." Is that tolerated anywhere? I'm not sure, but it certainly would blow up in smoke if it was me doing it, and yet that's now something that you have to put into play. Is it okay? And this happened to me, and I feel really badly about it. A friend of mine and I were alive in a pick six, and we were at kind of a memorial dinner celebration for somebody that was a relative of one of our close friends. And they invited about 50 people to a celebration of sorts, but at the same time, it was very somber and very solemn. And the priest that was presiding over this thing is giving an extremely compelling speech and telling everybody what a wonderful person this person was. And a friend of mine and I, that is known as Marty the Party Sachs, we were alive to the sixth leg of a pick six at Gulfstream Park. And if one of our two horses came through and won the race, we were going to collect, it was a modest one, maybe 6 or 7 dimes. So 3,500 apiece if we win the last race, the last leg. And it happens to go off coincidentally with probably the most meaningful and emotional part of this priest's dedication to this deceased human being. So now, what do you do? So we're watching the thing, at least without the sound. We had the courtesy to turn off the sound on this thing, but we're watching this pick six, and sure enough, neither of our horses ends up prevailing. They run like second and fourth, and we end up losing the thing. So we let out a giant groan, and the people actually looked at us in admiration, and we're thinking this is despicable that this was even noticeable that we interrupted this very emotional ceremony as being invited to by a person who was footing the bill for the whole damn thing. And they thought that we actually were reacting to something that the priest had said. And so we got away with it that time. But in general, not a good practice to be checking sports results, gambling results while you're sitting across the table, especially the woman that at one time may have been the woman of your dreams, maybe still is, or if you're in any kind of a ceremonial type of situation. And let's face it, you didn't have to deal with these things back in the day because you didn't have the opportunity to sit there and watch thoroughbred racing on your cell phone at any time of the day. So the betting world has changed. I don't know that the ethics have changed, but it would be a pretty good practice to put your fucking phone away and forget about the results. If you subscribe to the theory that women and gambling don't mix. I don't know if there are any cases of that being in reverse, where the woman is the one that's obsessed with some score or result, or how a game is being contested. And the guy is offended by her paying attention to it. But that would be one of the rare occasions where, as a degenerate, you have no idea what was going on, and logic would dictate that you stick to that philosophy for the rest of your life. All right, public handicappers, and I mentioned this at the top, where you can read the most sophisticated analysis now, and the more sophisticated it gets, the more likely you are to lose. I believe that. This comes from a source called BetSmart out of my New York Post, which I'm about to cancel for poor delivery and service. It's getting unreasonable, but as I said, I mean, that's Cro-Magnon man. I feel like Dad Campbell, where, I'm looking for something to happen that was only transpiring in the distant past, this type of approach. And a guy named Michael Calabrese. We're not, I mean, you would never want to steal anybody's work in this game. A guy named Michael Calabrese had handicapped 2 college basketball games. And I've been trying to sort of get myself immersed and more into and fuse myself more into college basketball because, as I said, we only have a few more weeks and that's it. Football dries up. No more college football after Monday night. And the NFL, while will be very exciting, we'll have one more round of games and then the Super Bowl after a 2-week hiatus. And that's it. You're out of action. So we have to sort of drift our way into something. I don't know that we have an overwhelming number of people that are betting tennis. Some people are betting tennis set by set. But, you want to get some kind of feel for it. So we're reading a bunch of different stuff. And this Michael Calabrese gives you Marquette and DePaul, and probably 12 paragraphs, all excellently written and thought out. Really sort of brilliant stuff here, and a very convincing argument to go ahead and lay 12.5 with Marquette. So the final on this game turns out to be it's a 2-point ball game as Marquette prevails and wins in overtime. It might have even been double overtime because it looked like an outrageous number of points were scored in this ball game. And it turned out to be just blatant ugliness. So you chalk up one loss there, and now you're thinking maybe the guy redeems himself with his other pick, which and it shows you how difficult betting can be and treacherous because the same math that these guys are using, that's what the bookies are using. So he recommends an under a bet on Mississippi State and Auburn, under 152 and a hook. And the game ends up at 154. So a total burial there, and yet you could read this guy, Michael Calabrese, all day long and figure, wow, pretty sharp. I don't know if he balances this out on the days that I'm not following his columns, but seems to be a trend. I don't know if you guys are finding that. Seems to be a trend that if you have a public handicapper, and we have guys that have been doing it a long, long time, they all have different approaches. I don't know that any of them are quite as deeply mathematically scientific. I mean, like Rene Descartes was doing the research for him, as some of the people that you're seeing that are posting these betting ideas and offering you advice on where to put your money right now. But this kind of surprised me because what happened to gut instinct? Is that no longer a factor in any type of wagering? Gut instinct. You're thinking, yeah, I think St. Louis sucks, so I'm going to go ahead and bet the Dodgers. Stuff like that. Out the window now. And what surprised me about it, because I would think, just like managing a team or coaching a team, don't you like a guy that has at least appears to have a semblance of gut instinct for making the right call at the right time? Certain coaches do. Many coaches don't. And now many of them are neutered completely because they have a guy in their ear going, 4th and 1 from this situation. It's an 82% success ratio. I'd say go for it. And there's no instinct involved. as to say, I know we can get this 1 yard. Now, Campbell has that approach, and several others. Dan Quinn seems to be a guy with the Commanders that loves to go for fourth downs and is very efficient. So he may be a better play caller on those fourth down situations than a lot of other people are. Because on top of going for what seem to be improbable situations on fourth downs that you see in college and the NFL, then you see some really horseshit play calling that goes along with it. So I mean, it's a double whammy. As your money is in the fate. You hate to see your money and your fate in the hands of fools, from the old King Crimson song. So anyway, yeah, the whole business of making these point spreads is based on the very same math that all of these guys are using. Uh, I found out, though, that Billy Walters, known as the world's greatest gambler, and documented his life story in a book that he wrote in conjunction with a good friend of ours, a good friend of the programs here, Armin Katayan, outstanding researcher and investigative reporter, and certainly a journalist of tremendous distinction, having done everything: HBO Real Sports, CBS's 60 Minutes, his own productions, deep, books that really got to the essence of the various subjects that he wrote about, including Billy Walters. And he said that Walters never, ever involved emotions or anything other than straight up math. Now, this was at a time when this was not a popular position. You didn't have all of these statistical breakdowns, but Walters in advance, much like the aforementioned Danny Beyer, who came up with his legendary speed figures, now published in the Daily Racing Form, much like Andy Beyer, he came up, or Bill James, he came up with his own system of numbers, Walters, and had attached and assigned a certain number of points to virtually every player in any situation that you could conceive of, especially when it was in regard to injuries, and never, ever let any kind of gut instinct or emotion enter into it. World's most successful gambler, and he was doing this 50 years ago, so maybe there's more to it than I would tend to feel, but I still think you got to go Earl Weaver sometimes, right? He was an early proponent, without anybody knowing what he was doing, of sabermetrics and analytics and all of this stuff, because he kept his own charts and he based much of what he did in terms of the platoon system. Lowenstein wouldn't have been in there on certain days because he didn't hit this guy particularly well. And Weaver was one of the first guys to really bring that to light. Bill James, of course, baseball abstract, had many great theories like that, but nobody paid attention to him because he seemed like some kind of lunatic fringe, being a proponent of looking at games in different ways, and as if you could actually ascribe a number to everything. So the analytics, cold hard truth for Billy Walters, world's greatest gambler, and not necessarily, anything that I could trust, because it seems to me every time that you read some kind of analysis that goes that deep, that inevitably that they're dead wrong. All right, so we do have the games coming up over the weekend, and we'll have more opinion on that. We were trying to connect with Troy West. He had some kind of an emergency. If I was babbling there and rambling a little bit, I thought maybe we were going to be able to make that connection. But we will look into all of the games that are taking place over the weekend. You do have the Chiefs at 7.5. Would you be that they weren't a bit against the point spread? They were in a season. They actually finished up, I think, one game under 500 against the spread. And of course, we all know that they were brilliant throughout the entire regular season, and come in with the best record in the AFC. Texans, Fugazi team in there. Is that a bit of a misrepresentation of what really it should be a top competitor in the AFC? The Texans, they beat the Chargers, who most people thought they were going to lose to. Were they overwhelmingly impressive? I don't know. The Chargers were so bad with the 4 picks by Justin Herbert that it's hard. I haven't run across anybody yet that is a big fan of the Houston Texans in this game. Nobody, right? Have any of you out there found somebody that actually says, "Oh yeah, I love the Texans in this spot"? Certainly not to win straight up, and maybe a consideration with 7 and a hook, but you would have to think that this is all about the Chiefs in this one. And we had Scotty M on with us yesterday. He loves the Lions laying 9.5, a big number for anybody that's putting up and going to go ahead and lay points in an NFL game. But His theory was that, that the Commanders' number is up. That all of these games that they lucked out in, it's not happening anymore. They finally run into a spot where it's just not going to work. Jaden Daniels been terrific in the clutch. Can they keep that game close? I don't know that you would find the majority of people to think so. The Lions laying 9.5. That was Scotty's recommendation yesterday. Might be a temptation to take the points in that game, but a tough call. The game that stood out to me among the playoff games in terms of games to bet, and I'm probably dead wrong about this, but I think the Buffalo Bills, is that game really going to go off with the Ravens favorite? Had it yesterday at 1 on a hook. Ravens favored on the road. Now, the Ravens are an excellent team. Had a conversation with a guy who was working the Ravens game last week where they were absolutely dominant. And he says the Ravens are fantastic. They're razor sharp. They're on their game. We all know about the previous chokes and playoff spots of Lamar Jackson. I have a personal friend that you bring up Lamar Jackson, and he goes apoplectic. Thinks this guy was the biggest blowtorch of cash in the history of sports handicapping, and can't stand anything about him. He had some very disparaging things to say about virtually every aspect of Lamar Jackson's being. Maybe a little over the top, certainly not politically correct, but this is the way he felt, and many gamblers do. Let's face it. And I found this to be true over the years. No matter where you are, no matter how liberal-minded you are about people and things in general, do you become exceedingly more racist when your team is losing? Possibly so. Certainly more politically incorrect when it comes to giving an assessment for what you think of certain players. And Lamar Jackson just triggers this, ignites this in my betting degenerate gambling friend. Will that happen again? Or having gone to the well so many times and failed in this type of spot, does Lamar Jackson play a stellar ball game? Derrick Henry is certainly going to be a force. So you could find reasons where the Ravens should be favored, but I keep looking at the Buffalo Bills at home. Josh Allen is right there toe-to-toe with Lamar Jackson to be considered the MVP of the league. If he prevails in this ball game and ultimately then beats the Chiefs, you would have to think that he would be a cinch to be that MVP, regardless of any outcome thereafter in the Super Bowl. Not sure if the voting takes place before that or after, but you would have to think Josh Allen right now is maybe a slight underdog to Lamar Jackson to be the MVP because there's so much media sentiment that Lamar Jackson is having like the greatest season of his life. So we shall see. But I think the Bills are real tough in this spot. And that Lamar Jackson will revert back to some of the things that we've seen where he's failed in the past. And this round of the playoffs or subsequent rounds and even in the first round. And I'm thinking that the Buffalo Bills getting points at home, too much of a temptation to pass up. It really is. It's like that pint of Haagen-Dazs that you haven't finished off that you finally noticed is still in the freezer. And you're thinking, yeah, I'm trying to follow my New Year's resolutions, which, by the way, people, it's January 15th. They had to go up in smoke by now, for sure. If you haven't dug into them yet and developed any kind of consistency, resolving yourself to do better things, it ain't happening. Forget about it. Look forward to 2026. So, and the Philly Rams game, many people feeling that the Rams are extremely alive here. Is this a case where the cliche actually applies? That, I wouldn't want to be playing the Rams right now. They're playing some good football. They did gather momentum in the latter stages of the season. Looked extremely impressive in their game against the Minnesota Vikings. Big time pass rush. Is it Chris Shula? I believe so, the grandson of Don Shula. How is he not the defensive coordinator of the Miami Dolphins? I mean, this guy's done a great job under Sean McVay and would be a rising star in the business. I don't know how anybody could ignore the fact that you have another Shula on the scene. He's the son of David Shula, I believe, who was briefly a very unsuccessful coach himself in the National Football League. Mike Shula, of course, had some success, but then ended up in Alabama, where being somewhat good but not outstanding wasn't acceptable, and they got rid of him for Nick Saban. He had done a great job recruiting Mike Shula, and subsequently went on to significant jobs as an OC in the National Football League. So the DNA is there. This Chris Shula, I think, can find a way maybe to decode. Can he decode Saquon Barkley? Hold him down to a limited number of effective yards in the game, and then make Jalen Hurts throw the ball, which he hasn't demonstrated that he's as sharp as he was in previous seasons at any time this year. So can he reverse the dynamic of what the Eagles want to do and keep the Rams in a game? I'm starting to convince myself that may be the approach. Take the points and the Los Angeles Rams on the road in their game against the Philadelphia Eagles, who would appear to be a vulnerable commodity, even though they won and covered the point spread in their last ball game. It wasn't one of those things that just blew your mind and you said, "Oh my God, the Eagles are great." So possibilities here coming up over the weekend in the next round of the postseason NFL divisional playoffs, and I'm thinking the Dogs will be barking on Sunday afternoon with the Bills getting 1.5 points, and if that holds up, and the Rams getting points from the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, you guys, don't bring your cell phone out. If you're having dinner with your girl, the last thing she wants to know is that you're checking scores, or in the case where you've left a bet in the race book, but now the dinner reservation time has come up, so you can't actually watch the race. And don't whip out your phone there. I mean, unless you want the relationship to end right then and there. Don't take out your phone and start watching for results of wagers that you've made while you're across the dinner table from that woman of your dreams. Remember, women and gambling don't mix. I'm 100% behind Andy Meyer on that. Unless she happens to understand your MO, which actually my wife and I now have an understanding that she's going to go to slot machines as soon as she enters any casino scenario, and I'm going straight to where I can bet horses. So we just split at the door. There's no nonsense. Oh, okay, you want to meet up in 15? No, none of that. It's just like when you're done, when your bankroll is empty, we'll get together and hopefully they'll comp us a meal. All right, guys, you have fun. Sorry about not being able to bring you Troy West today. You had some kind of emergency pop up. Strange things happening in Seattle. So where he hails from, but he does a great job at Troy Wins, and you can catch all of his handicapping information there. He's got some tremendous deals, and gives you picks for. I think he's offering like a week's worth for free right now, and the guy's been red hot all year long and demonstrated that on the show. He had a very upside winning record with his college and NFL picks here on the program. All right, we will see you tomorrow. Mike Jones will be on the ticket with us, and then on Friday with the professor, and we'll get some insight into the college football finale with Ohio State and Notre Dame. Do you take a shot there with the Fighting Irish? Getting a bunch of points? Can they go toe-to-toe with Ohio State? Will Ryan Day put himself back into a little shell and compromise his team's chances of a runaway victory? Were they that convincing, even though they won by 2 touchdowns over Texas? If Sarkisian doesn't make that bonehead call or allow it to go through, where he's laddering the ball backwards from the half-yard line, what the fuck was he thinking? And that cost anybody that was on Texas' side there. It was about to be 21-all. You're in pretty good shape. Getting 4.5, 5 points from Ohio State, maybe even 5 and a hook. Field goal becomes a field goal situation late in the ball game, fourth quarter, and instead you're getting hammered by 14 points. Unforgivable coaching blunder. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for being with us. For Greenlight Ventures, NoFilter.net, and the people at Bet Online, I'm Jeff DeForrest. We'll see you next time on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.